Ben Riggs presents Reading D&D Aloud. Episode 50. Mike Mearls plus Kelsey Dionne equal an hour of happy.
Greetings once again, assembled internet hordes. I am apparently controversial historian Ben Riggs, and with me are two people who likely need no introduction, and yet I will give one to each of them anyway. With me are Kelsey Dionne and Mike Mearls. Uh, Kelsey is a truly remarkable game designer in every sense of the word. I mean, it's possible when it comes to both with adventures, rules, and settings. You excel in all three, which is not something that is true of every great designer. But having seen your work in every realm, it all stands out and is spectacular. And Mike Mearls, who was the designer of the most played version of Dungeons and Dragons ever. Um, More people played your version than Gygax's, Cook's, Tweets, Heinso's, and again, I'm just unfairly listing only one person from prior editions, which I'm sure will also irritate Jim Wyatt. Um, but I am here kind of to facilitate conversation. This is not an interview. I'm hoping that by putting the two of you together in front of a microphone and hitting record, that amazing conversation will ensue. I will start with a question, though, which is a very sagacious D&D designer once said, every good D&D designer goes in search of D&D. And it is unusual when you're designing a version of D&D, and I hope, Kelsey, it's not too forward to say that Shadowdark is a version of D&D. Um, so how do you two both approach that challenge?
Wow, Mike, I want to hear how you approach that challenge first.
Just throw me into the breach. I got it. I am the fighter going through the door first. Great. Goodness. No. The it is really interesting. And actually I who said that?
You.
Name names. I said that. This is God damn it. When did I say that?
I wrote it down. I couldn't tell you when. I guess I could go. You start talking, and I can probably give you a date because I think it's on Google. Let me see where I wrote
I
it.
mean, Mike is known for wise pronouncements that are obviously off the cuff, and so it's like not rehearsed. And I think that that is very genuine.
This is the problem with living in real time. It's like, what? Hey, cool. Well, hey, at least it sounds. When you said it, I'm like, wow, that's deep. Wow, I said that. So well, it's funny you'd say that because I'm designing my own game now, and it's literally just me like, man, I'm just like sick of running fifth edition, and I'm sick of and it's nothing bad against fifth edition. It's like the game's great, right? People love it, but it's like I want to run my game, and I want to run a game that maps like what I want to do. And so, yeah, I think what we're kind of seeing, and what there's an interesting tension here. When you make an edition of D&D, you have to make so many people happy that there's like a very narrow path to success, and you have to like rigidly follow it, like from start to finish. And then when you start making your take on D&D, you can kind of just do whatever you want, right? Like you're sort of looking for like what's going to help me run the best game that I want to run. And so, it's kind of fun, being, here with Kelsey, because like I took a lot of inspiration from Shadowdark, right? Like the torch timer. Like I've been blogging about this, right? Like, oh, I basically like as it turns out, maybe this is because I'm a coaster, but like my search for D&D is like, okay, I want the D&D that I can play in an hour, where it moves super fast, that I don't like, there's no dead time. And so like, I'm like, okay, well, what if I had a 10-minute timer in the game, and like made it even go even faster? Because like the 1 hour timer was already pushing people forward. And I was like, oh, this is one of the things I really like about Shadowdark, because it gets my players to stop screwing around. The And so, yeah, I think in some ways that's almost like the design process for games in general. Is like there's a game at the end and you're searching for it. But what's interesting to me is there is this funny tension, and I think this is very apropos to D&D today. That I said earlier, there's this very narrow path for D&D to success. But I don't think that's true anymore. I think that was true like 10 years ago. But I think now it's a very wide path. Like there's lots of different ways now you can play D&D, and such a big audience playing it, and so many different ways they want to play it, that I think to me that's what makes this time period so exciting. Is I think we're going to see so many more D&Ds coming out. Because I mean, I know I'm very curious, Kelsey, to hear your answer, because I did get the sense, and I got my copy of Shadowdark like right here, right, and I just ran it on Wednesday. That this does read like someone ran a lot of D&D and just said, here's how I wish this game worked, and I'm gonna build this game, and voila, you get this. So yeah, Ben, I don't know if I answered the question because I've been kind of rambling as I tend to do, but yeah, I think it's a very personal journey. But like all art, it's very personal, but it's in the universe. Like I once heard this quote that like the most personal experiences are also the most universal. And so I think in some ways that's sort of what we're doing as designers. Like we're making these versions of D&D and hoping that someone else out there looks at it and says, oh yeah, this is what I wanted out of a role-playing game. And that's why I think for some ways Shadowdark is a good example of like getting it right, because then you're like, oh, I didn't know I wanted this until I saw it. Now I want it, you know? So
that's still wild to hear from you, because it's most certainly I was studying and learning from your design well before we ever met, you know, and so
wow.
it's so cool to hear that. And I think it is, I can speak to my situation in my own work where Shadowdark definitely was I was jokingly calling it like my 6th edition when I was well before the edition ever changed, because it was kind of how I would try to rewrite D&D from scratch, trying to take lessons from every edition. So I was chasing D&D, like, you know, without question when I was writing it. And, you know, I think a lot of people are also chasing nostalgia and what D&D was to them in the halcyon days of their most fond memories, you know, and it's not to say that we don't have fond memories playing it now. But I think that there is like a mythic D&D that's slightly different for everybody. That's sort of like the pristine, what makes them feel like they're back in their favorite memories of the game. I think that's true for a lot of people, surely not everyone, but that's kind of what I was chasing. And yeah, it's funny because you never quite get there either, right? Like you get as close as you can, but it's a little bit of like the St. George's dragon that can't be slain, because you can never quite find it, but you always try to get as close as you can. And I'm sure this is true for Mike too, but like I mean, I publish Shadowdark and I continue to tinker with things where I'm like, well, I would slightly change this in my home games if I could. And so we're always chasing D&D and trying to arrive, maybe never quite arriving, but I so agree with that. I love that analogy. I love that you don't remember that you said that too.
I wrote it down.
Falling apart, and it's hard to think like, you know, whatever, this entire thing, like you said earlier, it's so trippy to like work in these games and realize people care. But but you know, you were talking about this idea of like, you know, of nostalgia, and as soon as you said that, I had this really weird moment of like, wait, when I played D&D or any TTRPG when I was a kid, I played as an adult. But now that I'm an adult, I essentially play as a kid, right? Isn't it so funny? Like, of all the games, like, this is such like, it's almost like this really weird centering experience where like it either pulls us forward to our idealized self or pulls us back to what we thought our idealized self could have been, like in an action adventure kind of way, right? Like,
Dang.
you know, like isn't it Neil Stephenson has the quote from what's his the book with the pizza delivery guy, the Deliverator. But there's this.
I only read Cryptonomicon, so I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's his book before that one. Anyways, he has this quote that says something like, "Every guy up until age 25 thinks that like if they really were motivated, they become like the greatest kung fu master on the planet. Like if they had to like avenge their slain family or like or if they just put, and it's like, yeah, then after that you realize, no, it's never going to happen, right? Like you will never be the ultimate.
You have to let go of the dream of being a kung fu master.
But I think that's kind of what D&D says is no, you get to always be 25, right? You're either reaching toward it or you're reaching back to it. Like, so, yeah. Okay, so Kelsey, you were at Gary Con, so I'm very curious to get your read on it. I had this really vivid sense of Gary Con this year that it was like this reversion to teenagedom for like everybody there. Like,
Yes.
I don't know. Yeah, right. And I don't know if it's just because we're far enough from COVID that everyone's just forgotten about it now. Now it's because it's just a con again. But it just felt like we're all teenagers here, right?
Yeah.
Like the music and like the drinking and the pizza and the playing games. Like it totally felt like this is my ultimate 16-year-old Mike's view of how to spend 4 days, right? Like,
Yeah,
this
it's
would
like a
be
big
epic.
sleepover party.
Yeah, no, right. It is. Like it had that vibe. Like it was so interesting to contrast it with last year. And other years of it, just for whatever reason, it just really felt like this is really people getting back in touch with what it was like to be a teenager. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it was so interesting to think, like, watching like 50 something guys like slam dancing to like, Iron Maiden, on a Saturday night,
Yeah.
it's like a keg of beer and there's people wearing, Judas Priest t-shirts. Like, it's 1991 again for me. Like, it was so interesting to just experience that. So
This year in particular too, and I wonder if I've always wondered, is it because I finally hit a critical mass where like I literally see a friend every time I turn around there? And now that we've been going for long enough. And also I guess last year you and I both did Founders and Legends, so we pulled like a 10-day stretch and I was really tired by Gary Con. But this year it just felt like, yeah, like a reunion of some kind, that more so than ever. And there was a lot more like kind of just open celebration, just people like hanging out and drinking and like laughing and talking about stuff. And like maybe we finally have come far enough from COVID or something. But very, very celebratory this year, and easy and fun, and so many friends running around. It really, I was like, yeah, it felt like to me like a sleepover party, but with beer.
yeah, and it was no, it totally, and it was super like invigorating in a way that a convention, like conventions always have this, classic thing. You see people, you get excited, but like it just felt different this year. It's almost like I'm trying to think how to put this. It was almost like getting back in touch with like the roots of why I like these games, like in a very
Yeah.
primal way. Like, oh yeah, this is it. This is like, there's just something going on here culturally. I don't know if it's just a cultural moment, like the shift globally, like just where the world's going. But yeah, it just felt like more, in some ways, more vital than ever.
My dog tried to bark. I'm so sorry. I just muted myself. Matilda.
Look, we can have dogs and cats here. It's fine. It's
I'm
fine.
really hoping Zoom filters it if she busts out, but I fully agree. There was something really special about this year. I don't know why, but it was my favorite Gary Con on record. And I can't really pinpoint exactly why, but I think it was just the very celebratory feeling of it this time. Yeah.
Yeah, there was just a vibe, and it's weird because last year, yeah, I did the Founders Legend thing. I was like totally burnt out before the con even
We were so
started.
tired.
Oh God, yeah, I was exhausted. But and it was weird, but it also just had this almost like, I don't know, I can't quite put my finger on it. Like the con felt a lot more crowded last year. And it
Hmm.
felt like crowded, like in a bad way. Like there's so many people here, and I just don't want to deal with this. And I'm just like, I'm kind of done with all of this. Like, I don't know. Like, I know for
Was
myself, like I was
attendance?
just thinking,
I'll see what I
I
can
didn't mean to
find.
interject, but
I'll try to
yeah,
look it
I'm
up right now. I'll
curious.
try to look it
I'm
up.
curious how attendance was
yeah,
compared to the prior year. But yeah,
yeah, that's interesting because it felt it. I wonder if it was down, if it just arranged differently. Because last year was the
right.
50th anniversary, and it felt
True.
like there was just like mobs of people everywhere. I don't know. I just felt like I could never get comfortable, and I also kind of felt like with like the new edition of D&D on the horizon, I think there was just a lot of. I mean, it was just me because I was like thinking like, okay, am I going to try to self-publish D&D stuff? Am I going to do my own game? Like, I just didn't know like where things would go, and
Yeah.
and it felt like that's all been resolved now. So it was part of it for me was like, oh no, I'm coming with a real clear purpose. Like I know what I'm doing. I'm making a game. The but I don't know. Like, and maybe this is kind of thing where I'm going to say this, and like a year from now, I'm watch this, listen to it, and be like, wow, that was wrong, right? So I don't want to jinx it, but it kind of feels like they said I'm going to jinx it. I have this thing. Maybe it's because I have Italian heritage. Like, if you say a good thing, it will never happen. But I almost get like this sort of board games in 1998 vibe, where it's like Settlers of Catan has come out, like it's kind of achieved this critical mass, and we're at the point now where like people are importing games like Tikal, like these like other games like that were in Germany or in Europe, but we like haven't like we're on the verge of hitting the point where people start now designing games in response to it. Like it almost
Mm.
feels like the OGL and like with everything happening, it's like I think that TTRPGs and the D&D brand have now officially diverged. Like they are two
Mm.
separate things. Like at GaryCon. Now I know there's an Adventures League room at GaryCon, but how many conversations did you have with people who were playing like the new D&D?
No one that I know of was playing the new D&D there.
Right. No, right. And I don't think that's a case of like, oh, it's because everyone's so like, oh, I don't want this. I think it was just more like, this is now its own thing. Like
Yeah.
Shadowdark, OSR, this like the Gary Con crowd, like it's now fully independent. Like it doesn't need D&D to prop it up.
Yeah,
Like,
and maybe part of the feeling of this very like jovial celebratory feeling was that there are many, many independent game creators who are at GaryCon and they're all crushing it. Like they've
yeah,
all their dreams have come true. Like the Pirate Board guys, like
yeah,
ev- everybody, every game designer I know. I mean, perhaps it's because last year a lot of them were just about to debut a big project or they were working on something, but all of my peers there were are just at this moment of a peak in their self-publishing careers, and it doesn't honestly look like there's a slowdown in sight. And so that was a very exciting feeling too.
no, and I think that's really on point because I think we have crossed the barrier structurally, like as
Mhm.
in terms of like how do you make these things? That now there is this ability to create the direct connection to your players. And
Yes.
in some ways, like the economy, like what's happening in game stores, what's happening with distributors, tariffs, all this stuff. I'm not going to say it doesn't matter, but I think it doesn't have the same sort of impact because you are now truly building a community, right?
Yeah.
There's this theory, I think it was like 3M or one of these, the company, which like a surprisingly innovative company back in the 50s and 60s. I think it was 3M. They had this rule that once you had more than 300 people working on a project, you had to split the project into two because you couldn't have a functional community with more than 300 people. Or there was some number they figured out. And
Yeah.
it feels like digital has now enabled us to like scale that up, but I still
Mhm.
think it's not like infinite. Like, yeah, you can have more people like, on a forum, whatever, but I don't think it's still infinite. I think it is like 5,000, 10,000, so some number like that.
Mhm.
But I think when you get beyond that, you do have a breakdown. Like I was on N World the other day, and it was interesting looking people, comment about. I forget what I was reading about. It was something someone, was whatever. Like someone said, "Oh, I think armor class should go down instead of going up." I don't know, whatever, something like that. And I'm looking at the comments and thinking there are people who are approaching this game that like I designed because I'm trying to fifth edition. There's one of the designers on it, and it's just such a different way of looking at the game. Like I have never looked at the game this way. I don't think I can have a meaningful connection to that person, you know.
Yeah.
But when I'm like talking Shadowdark with people, it's like okay, like no, we're in the same club. Like we're on the same wavelength, and that's a lot of people, right? So it just feels like that's maybe kind of where Gary Con is. Like I'm gonna be going to Gen Con. I'm curious to see how Gen Con compares, like the vibes.
Right. It's yeah, Gen Con, I've only been now for 2 years in a row after taking a really, really long break from going to it. So I've only got a couple tests under my belt of the read on Gen Con, but I find it to be also a very celebratory feeling there. But nothing's quite like Gary Con. I don't know. I don't know. They're all fun, but like there's something really, really special about Gary Con, and I'm probably going to be reflecting on this for a long time after this conversation because you have identified something about it that I noticed but didn't really put into words. So yeah, but Gen Con will be fun. That will also
Yeah,
be cool. Can I ask you, okay, this is something, can I ask you something that I've always wanted to know that's like a little bit of a like it's not a sad question, but it's a question
oh,
that I want to see how you feel about this because it's something that I sometimes experience, but certainly not at the level you do, which is that fifth edition is like the ultimate punch up, right? Everybody tries to punch up at it because it's at the top. And do you ever feel like when you hear people like just absolutely eviscerating things about it that are oftentimes extremely nitpicky and like not a big deal. Do you ever feel like you're like, you don't have to be like that mean about it? Like, how does that make you feel?
oh
Like,
no, it makes me excited. Okay, so here's my
yeah,
secret. Here's the
yeah.
secret. The secret, and this is why actually I probably do come across as kind of cranky about 5.5. Like, come on, man. But like part of it's like I want to like be excited about D&D, and it to me it just stuck too close to definition. It was
Yeah,
way
yeah.
too conservative. So here's the secret. The secret is the best outcome for me, like what would make me happiest about everything else, is if some new gang of designers came along and just made fifth edition look like trash. Like just made like there's such a like better like, oh, clearly I wish we had done it this way. Because that to me means the hobby's moving forward and people are making better games. So when I see people like sometimes like the only thing that gets me irritated is when people are like bad faith, like you can't like okay, this is there are two arguments that get me just irritated. D&D has lots of rules for combat, so therefore it's about combat. It's like tell me you know nothing about TTRPG design without telling me you know nothing about TTRPG design. Okay, say things like that. Oh man, that's just so bizarre. Like I don't even know where to begin. And then the other thing is when people get the experience rules wrong. Like you only get XP for killing monsters. Like dude, the fifth edition, the 24 DMG, like goes on and on and on about all the ways you can award XP. I don't know if the game even defaults to giving you like XP for just like killing monsters. I think it even explicitly comes out and says like you get XP for overcoming a monster, which could include, you know, like talking past it, making it your friend, tricking it, avoiding it. Like, and so when people do that, it's like, okay, you haven't read the game, you know, yes. And that to me is like, that's just lazy. So if people are just like, just not willing to like really engage with game design, like as a craft and as an art to understand, like, well, dude, that's just really goofy. Like it's, I can't even think of like, you know, a comparison. Like it's just this weird measure of like, I don't know, it'd be like saying the United States is obsessed with, you know, cod fishing because look at all the rules they have for cod fishing. Like, dude, like you just, no, dude, it's not how no one talks about this just because there's 10,000 pages of laws about it. It's just like, that's not how rules work. Like, I don't even, but yeah. And then yeah, I get excited. Like, I think it's good. Like, I was so excited when we got the OGL done for 5th edition because I'm like, okay, now people can start like tearing this game apart. Because I think that's what you should do to RPGs. You should tear them apart. That's how we advance.
I'm going to interrupt. Yeah. Can I interrupt to ask one question here, Kelsey? So how much of a struggle was it for you to get an OGL done for 5th edition?
Oh, like to a replacement once the OGL became in question, or?
Well, because 5th edition didn't originally have an OGL, right, Mike?
No, it was 2 years after, I think. I think 2016.
Oh. Well, I think a lot of people were using the 3rd edition derived one to sort of hack things together. So, and I wasn't like seriously publishing.
Sorry, I meant it was for Mike. I was interrupting you, so I said your name though.
Oh, Mike. Okay, yeah, no, that's for Mike.
So how hard was it to get the OGL done?
Yeah, how hard was it for you to get the OGL done for 5th edition?
It was one of those things where I just needed to find the right argument that made sense to people. So it was Nathan Stewart who ended up saying I had to convince. And at the time, he was basically in charge of D&D. And some combination like Chris Lindsay and Rodney Thompson came up with the idea for the DMs Guild. So, okay, we have this DMs Guild. You can use our IP, you can use all our rules, but you got to play by our, you know, by what we want. And we don't own it, but we have the right of first refusal to print it. I don't know. I forget the exact details. That was also one that was really funny. We feel like Wizards is just, they're making so much money off it. I'm like, dude, we are like charging the minimum we could get away with. Like, it's all going to drive through. Like, if you're upset about the margins, go talk to drive through. Because anyway, nothing gets drive through. They got to make a living, right? But so really what it came down to is saying, hey, the OGL, there's already people using it. If we do the DMs Guild but don't do the OGL, people will just look at it and go, why would I do this? I want the OGL. But if we do them both, and this is when I get to feel clever because it's actually how it worked out. We do them both, and people can't complain because, like, well, if you want to use the OGL, it's right over here. But here's this DMs Guild. So we could just focus on the upside of the DMs Guild, which when we launched, we thought was you get to use the Forgotten Realms. What we didn't know would happen was that it would just become this destination. And there was just so much attention put on it, and it just took off as a marketplace. And then, and I'm going to ask Kelsey about this in a sec. Let me just finish up. But so people started posting just like, oh, here's my new character class. It was like, well, we never intended it to be used that way. We wanted that stuff to go for the OGL. We really wanted us to focus on the realms. And I think at the time we knew Eberron was going to come back. But yeah, it just took off. But I think it took off because, and this is this is one thing Nathan Stewart got. He got the audience. Like he had come over from EA Sports, so he knew the power of community. He knew that, you know, Madden was such a big success because there was a community around it who like really cared about the game. even some of like the diversity push when people were like, oh, it's because of just like woke Seattle politics. It's like, no, the guy who ran the business came from EA Sports, where they're like, hey, we made our games appeal to just everybody who likes football, and we sold 1 billion copies. So it was just like, let's just make fantasy appeal to everybody, right? Like, it was so funny. The internal discussion was like, had nothing to do with like politics, whatever. It was just like, no one's selling fantasy games to like, a diverse audience. Let's just do that. Hey, look, we sold a bunch, right? So so yeah, that was one of the things because it was community focused, I was able to make that argument, and it ended up working. And I think that's one of the things when, not to derail this with an OGL discussion, but I just think a lot of that was misunderstanding the reason thinking behind it. So, but this spins around. So Kelsey, you got your start in the DMs Guild, didn't you?
I did. And I was going to say, I really appreciated the option for both outlets, because the first thing I ever published was on DMs Guild. And in hindsight, this was intelligent, but I kind of was like implicitly understood that if you wanted to build an audience, you should probably start by lowering the barrier to entry as much as possible. And so the adventure I published was free. And it's been downloaded like 180,000 times now or something on DMs Guild, which is pretty significant. I could get the exact number. I haven't checked it in like a year or so, but that was huge for me kind of establishing myself and like linking back to my other work, which I published under the OGL, because I already knew that I wanted to kind of create my own sort of like off-platform presence where I was sort of directly selling material to people, because it kind of seemed apparent to me that was the most financially like useful way to be a small publisher. Like, the margins really matter when you're a small publisher. So I was like, well, I'm going to use DMs Guild as basically a marketing platform and direct people over to my offsite platform. But the opportunity to use both the DMs Guild and the OGL were crucial in what I did. Wouldn't have worked without both of those options. So thanks for fighting for that, because you gave me a career. So thank you.
Hey, Linda Shadowdark, so good stuff. Thank you to me, I guess, and thank you to you, of course. But so what year was that? Like, what year was that you started with it? Was it
for me? It was 2017. Yeah. So
okay, sorry. So good. I didn't want to.
Because it was pretty new then. Still, the guild. It wasn't like brand new, but it was relatively new. So.
But I think we talked about this at some point. So, do you have a background in marketing or in tech?
A little of both. Well, in tech, my degree's in print journalism, and back when newspapers still existed, and so we did have to study marketing as a part of that. And I wasn't like a guru. I wasn't a guru at it, but I think I had a little bit of knowledge. But then I worked in, I graduated literally like within months of the recession hitting in 2008. And I don't know if Ben remembers this, but like the Journal Sentinel fired like 200 reporters that month. And I was like, well, I'm supposed to be a reporter, so it wasn't so great. So I did a little bit of reporting for a small newspaper group in southern Wisconsin. And then I also worked at Apple, like selling iPhones, and then ended up working my way up, like, but in both fields at various times in my life. I moved into like corporate tech. And then I taught a little bit and did all this stuff that kind of was all interlinked. So yeah, that's the background. But
I would like to briefly shout out one thing here, which is I have a passionate theory that D&D is always being pulled between like the techies and the English majors. And in you, they seem to be resolved in one.
I did both things. I don't know how I happened to be that fortunate, but it helps a lot to set up the tech side of things that can be a little daunting if you're trying to run your own e-commerce site. I mean, I think a lot of people bounce off of the like feeling scared by the tech involved in that. It's not so bad though, but yeah.
But see, it's fascinating to me because I think we had this conversation or parts of it at GaryCon. Like, I remember like, coming, leaving Wizards and so, okay, now how does publishing work? Now it's been years since I was not at, 18 years or whatever. And then hearing about how a lot of these online, sales platforms and PDFs operate. And it was just like every fiber of my like, tech background or what I worked in video games, like, why would I ever sell my stuff here? Like, these guys are controlling my relationship with my customer. Like, why would I ever give that away? That's the most valuable thing. So it's just, it's wild to hear you say, like, you're doing that in 2017, which is way ahead of the curve. but also like I don't think anyone else in TTRPGs even thinks that way. Like I don't think it even occurs to them, right? They just say, "Oh, it's this site sells the most, so that's where I go," right? And
Yeah.
it's so weird to me that it's just like no, like it's not. You don't want to go where everyone goes. You want to go where your people go. Like, and that the best place for them to go is your place. Like owning that email address, owning that relationship. Like so it's so fascinating to hear like that that's where you started. So it's 2017. You have this free adventure up. You're using it to point people to your own website, which is like super cutthroat. And I will say this: if like Nathan foresaw that, he never would have launched the DMs Guild. He
Yeah,
never
I'm
would
glad
have
he
said,
didn't see it.
we had figured out in 2016. Wait, people will just put products up there and then in the product point them to another place to go, and then oh wow, like this is like, but it's awesome. I love it. I love it.
It
That's
was a little
exactly how you do it.
gorilla.
No, it's
Little
awesome. It's
gorilla.
badass. It's exactly what you do, right? Hack systems. Like I'm like a systems guy. I love it. But so how did that then grow? Like you're writing fifth edition stuff. Did you always have a sense like you wanted to like fully like okay, like you're coming to my site now, I want to build an ecosystem around that where you don't have to go anywhere else? Like was that from early on, or did you kind of grow into that, or like walk me through that a bit? Like
It
was the
was.
ambition mapped out, or is it like did it kind of grow as you went?
I think it was, I think I knew, and I also want to, don't let me forget, because I'm so curious how you move from tech more toward writing. I feel like I should know that story
Oh
because it's
no,
so,
it's a stupid story. I'll tell when we're done, but yours is far more clever. Mine is
I
just
don't
dumb.
know.
But yeah.
But it's the trajectory. I just knew that I wanted have a direct line to my audience. And I kind of understood that that would be tied into maybe making it more possible for this to be a job. I did not believe for the first few years that it would actually be something that could be a career.
Hmm.
Um, but I figured like if you have a direct line to your audience and your audience keeps growing, then no matter what happens, because at this time too, there were a lot of people, like there were a lot of fiction writers who were trying to self-publish and they were selling through Amazon, like Kindle or Kobo. And I just happened to, because of trying to learn the basics of marketing, come across the whole like self-publishing novels and short story community. And they kind of had a prototype of the DMs Guild that they were already grappling with and all of its complications and implications for their business, like a couple years in advance of the DMs Guild. So I got a lot of really interesting perspectives and cautionary tales from that community about how important it is to own your platform because Amazon can change the rules at any time, and they do. And so that really stuck with me. And I was like, well, I'm definitely going to make sure I own my newsletter and my audience. And whether or not that leads to success, so be it. But then at least I have the most chance at maybe it resulting in something. And that's all I knew. That's all I knew. And then I just kept being like, continue to grow, little plant, until it got bigger and bigger.
So was there like a tipping point where you're like, okay, now I want to go and make this like my own game? Like, or was that something that just kind of evolved, or was it?
I started eventually to make enough to eclipse my where I would be comfortable as a salary over time
Mhm.
because I was working in tech, and then I would basically take what I could afford and just reinvest it back into making new material and trying to grow, trying my hand at things like running ads or like doing small marketing things like little giveaways and stuff. And it just started to become like a consistent, like I publish an adventure, I make this much. And I was like, maybe I can actually do this. Like I was used to getting by. Like I was basically a poor student most of my life, and like I was used to getting by on very little. So I thought, it hit a point where I was like, if I can just keep publishing stuff and people keep showing up like they are, then I can keep doing this. And that was about 4 years in, I think, or three. Hmm.
It's like around like
Actually,
2019,
yeah,
2020, or
I actually quit my job and moved out of New York with my now wife like 4 months before COVID happened.
oh
And
wow.
yeah, and we were like, it's time. We're gonna move. We're gonna get out of this city and we're gonna go live somewhere more affordable and we're gonna really try to make this work. And we kind of had fortunate timing because I don't think I would have wanted to be in the city during COVID. It was pretty brutal. So
Wait, so were you in New York City itself, like not New York State, like New
yes,
York City?
the
Do you mind
city.
me
Yeah, New
asking
York
where?
City. It's yeah, in I was living in Brooklyn in New York City. So
Whereabouts? Which neighborhood? I lived up in Astoria.
oh, I had have friends in Astoria. I was down more in the Williamsburg area.
Oh, okay.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
I lived in an apartment in Williamsburg that the homeless squatters were still in it when the real estate agent showed it to us. This is back in the late 90s. So that was always
Wow.
so we ended up in Astoria. It's like, I don't know if these guys are going to come back and try to take their apartment back. Like this guy kicks them out.
Oh no,
Yeah,
things are.
soon after Astoria.
It has changed a lot
Oh
in
yeah, I
that whole
imagine.
neighborhood has changed a lot. So it's yeah, New York's constantly changing. That's so funny too that you lived there. We're both and you used to work in tech. You used to well,
Yes.
yeah. Tell me
So
a
I
little
worked.
bit. I want to hear the story of how you moved from tech to writing. Like, why did you decide to try? How did you try? Like,
So it's tied to living in New York. So
yeah.
there's two parts to it. The first part was I was working at Apple. Uh, and if you remember, like God, the ancient days, like System 8, like 90s vintage Macs, like
You were
it was
also
like
doing Apple.
it was. Yep. So we had Apple had a Manhattan office, and
Yes,
I
yes.
worked. So I it was a very fortunate thing. Like so, I got hired by a company that was subletting office space from Apple. So their rent was me. They hired me to be basically the tech support slash sysadmin for their computers.
Okay.
And in theory, I was supposed to be also this company that was subletting from Apple. So I was never officially an Apple employee, but I worked basically at an Apple office, taking care of all the Apple computers and all this other stuff.
Fair,
Um,
yeah.
and so I would, so working this job, and I'm supporting two offices, which is a lot of work, but like whatever is easy because it's just Macs. OS 8, whatever, was so simple. It was just like the hardest thing I did. I had to do a clean install of the operating system and reinstall extensions one by one. Again, this is ancient computing. This is like almost 30 years ago.
What?
But then the guy who was subletting from Apple was this. God, I hope he's not listening, but he deserves if he hears this. He was this insufferable prick. And so he kept pissing off Apple. So the person from Apple, who was my boss, went and looked at the contract. The contract said that I would do work for the subletting company only with Apple's permission. So my boss was so sick of this guy. She went to him and said, Mike has no permission to ever do work for you ever again. You have to hire your own tech support person.
Oh no.
So I have all this free time now, right? And so I went from I had like maybe 40 hours of work a week, and it was probably like 20 hours and 20 hours to like 20 hours work, but I'm getting paid full time wage, and I have nothing really else to do. So I started I should start writing. And my boss was like, sure, go ahead. She's like, as long as our computers are working and all the hardware's working and everything's fine, I don't care what you're doing. Just keep everything working, because she just wants to stick it to this guy. And so I started writing because I had all this free time at work. So why not? The and I started writing because I was complaining about my job to my friend, who my roommate. We came home drunk one night, and I was whining and whining and whining and whining about my job. And he said something like, look, you're obsessed with games. Why don't you do something with games? And it was like, oh yeah, you're right. I guess people actually make these things. I should try it. So that's when I started doing the freelance writing thing. And then eventually I got sick of I probably should have a career at some point. I was just living this total the dude from The Big Lebowski was my idol at the time. I'm 24, just out of college, just kind of doing whatever I want, and living in New York in the 90s when everything was awesome. It's so.
Wait. Everything was awesome in the 90s? Please,
Okay,
tell me more.
I feel that way about it too.
Right? No, because it was so funny. So I read this comment from some I forget, it was on Reddit, and they said they watched the movie Fight Club. And we're like, okay, let me get this straight. In Fight Club, this guy has a full-time job that pays him all this money, and he has this nice apartment and no debt, and he's angry. What's this guy's problem? That's the 90s in a nutshell. We just didn't know how bad it gets. Oh, this is just how things are gonna be, right? There's just jobs everywhere, and there's just money, and the internet's gonna make it an infinite money machine. And so I ended up plugging into the infinite money machine because I left Apple to say, I should get a real job. So I ended up going to a startup. I got headhunted to do some coding, and basically it was this really weird email services company that looking back, it's oh, they weren't really sure what they were building. It kind of kept changing, but then I think we kind of accidentally invented the spam filter, maybe, and email ads, but I didn't see a lot of money out of it. Whatever. It's the but I got to work there, and then And so it was cutting into my writing time. And so so I finally decided, okay, this is serious. Like, this is not like, this actually happened. It's not me being dramatic. I decided, you know what? I'm going to try writing full time. I'm going to quit my job. And also the startup was getting like, okay, we're not really getting funding. I know we don't have any clients because I was writing the code to integrate clients into our service and we didn't have any. So they just had me doing other engineering projects. So I get that, so it's like, okay, I don't think this company's long for the world. I want to get out. My rule was always like something my dad taught me. It was like, if there's a downturn or whatever, get out early. You want to get laid off early or leave early because then you get your next job. And then when everything bottoms out, you don't want to be losing your job when everything's like bad, because that means you're going to be out of work for a while. So and if you're thinking, okay, it's the .com bubble starting to pop, because I had planned, okay, I'm not going to tell my boss, because I like my boss. Like, I don't want to quit on a Tuesday. I'm sorry, on a Monday, because that's a bummer way to start your week. I'll do it on Tuesday. Tuesday, when I had just got back from like a vacation, like it's, just after Labor Day, it's September 11th in 2001. Yeah, right. This is what threw me off too, is I listen to Howard Stern in the morning because they're living in New York. I'd turn the radio on, and that's what I listened to as I got ready. But I'm like, no, I want to, like, before I go to John Matthew and tell him I'm quitting, I want to just like, I got to think. So I didn't have the radio, no news, nothing, because this is before cell phones. I have or at least whatever, smartphones. So I have no idea what's going on when I walk out of my apartment in Astoria and walk down to the Ditmars Boulevard N train stop and walk up, because it's above ground, in Astoria, and I get to the top and there's smoke coming out of the World Trade Center. And I do the very un-New York thing of like asking a person, like, what's going on? And I always remember this very vividly. This woman was like, oh, like a plane hit the World Trade Center, which and I think everyone else around interpreted to mean like a Cessna. Like, because that's happened before. Like, planes have sometimes, so it's, oh, okay, wow, okay. That's wild. Whatever, right? Gonna go to work, like, and then if you have been to Astoria, when you take the N train, I don't know, I guess it's probably still the N train. You head, like, yeah, okay, yeah. You head down toward the Queensboro Bridge. I forget now. The bridge to go across to Manhattan. Like, that's the last above ground stop. And then you go under. But the key is you have to turn right to head into Manhattan to go under the East River. And as we're turning, I had a perfect view as the second plane hit the World Trade Center.
No way.
So I saw it from behind. So all I saw was the explosion. I didn't see the plane. I just saw, like, and it was one of those, like, you read Lovecraft or whatever. It's like, oh, like the mind recoils. And that is exactly, like, I was unable to process what I just saw. Like half of the other tower just like exploded outward and all this flame. What the hell's going on? And I ended up going into Manhattan because I'm like, okay, this is history. I want to see what happens next, because I'm 26 at the time and young and stupid, right? That peak, I could be a kung fu master, right? Like the so yeah, and that's when I was just like, I absolutely have to get out of here. Like, this is it. I got one life. Like, that could have been me. Like, I used to go, when I commuted from New Jersey, I lived down in Newark for a little bit. I went through the World Trade Center every day, and I'm like, okay, life's too short. Like, I want to try writing and making games. So let's see what happens next. So yeah, so I went in. I didn't quit. Yeah, so that's what kind
of. You didn't quit that day, right? You didn't.
No, I wasn't like, hey, by the way, guys, I know national tragedy, but like, I'm quitting. Right? No, I waited till like the next week. But yeah, and so that was like my origin story. I moved back in with my parents and just started writing full time and just did it. And, and I was very lucky. I had a nest egg from working in tech. That's back when it's like, I know how to turn on a computer and I know I can make it say hello world. Oh, great. Here's a 6-figure salary.
You're hired.
Yeah,
it's still a little bit like that. I don't know how I got all the way up, but because I was doing systems engineering too.
Oh, really?
But I worked my way up, but I'm like, I don't think I'm qualified for this job. I'm the weakest person on this team, but I did my best. But wow, that's crazy. But like one more question, because first of all, your story is fascinating. You were like, it's not interesting. It's an awesome story. And
that's going in a book.
Yeah. That's crazy stuff. But you are you like a trained writer? Because obviously
No.
you know your way. How did you become so proficient at writing?
So I've always had a little bit of flair for it. And I remember in 8th grade, I had my 8th grade English teacher was very encouraging that you should write. But I actually think it's because I was a programmer, because I 100% think of like writing as like writing code. Like this thing has to do a thing. It all has to line up. And actually, okay, I'm going to name drop. Ready? Everyone, about to name drop. Bob Salvatore once told me, like, he was like, because he's I think he's an accountant by training, so he had kind of a similar attitude. Of like his thing was no, the story should add up. And I forget who he had a mentor who would kind of give him that advice, but like was kind of kind of filtering it through. And so it's just like when you're telling a story, at the end of the day, everything has to add up. Like if you say like this happens here, then you need the counterbalance. Like, oh, like, it's like Chekhov's gun, right? Here's a gun. Well, you should use it. Took the time to tell the reader about it. So it should pay off in some way. And how's it going to pay off, and things like that. So I just always, I think part of it is just family. My family is full of storytellers, Irish, Italian. So that's just, working class. So that's, what we do to entertain each other at, family gatherings, because everyone would just sit around and bullshit, but I was also, I always enjoyed writing. I always thought it was interesting. I was obsessed with learning to read when I was a kid. Like I would drive my mom bonkers. Like, what's that say? What's that say? Because I knew in my little 4-year-old brain, like there's a system. Like those symbols mean something. Like if I can figure it out, I can read all of them. I thought that was so cool. So I just bother endlessly trying to decode it. And when I finally got a chance, like in school, to be taught how to read, I just was so excited. And it just took off from there. And programming was similar, where it's like, oh, you can tell the computer what to do. And I thought that was so cool. I remember the first time programming, I was like, oh, it'll just literally do what I say. Even if I give it a completely nonsensical thing to do, it'll just do it. And that just blew my mind. Like, and so, yeah, I think I just always had in the back of my mind this idea of writing. Though it still weirds me out when people say I'm a good verbal storyteller, because I also had like a crippling stutter until I was like 20 or something like that.
No way.
Like, yeah, I could barely talk. Like I had so much trouble just like getting like sentences out.
How did you overcome that? That's amazing. It just stopped.
It just kind of stopped. Yeah. And I read stories of people just sort of like, oh yeah, just kind of grew out of it. It was just a phase, or like, yeah, because I just had this awful stutter. Like, and it was like I just couldn't talk. Like,
whoa. And you just you just got yourself through it. That's, we've all, I'm trying to think. When I was in my early 20s, I definitely used to, I was an unconfident person in my early 20s. And I think that I've definitely come a long way from there, but I was painfully shy. And the thought of like getting up and speaking in front of even 20 people would have been paralyzing to me. And like nowadays it's so different. And I think it's just force of practice, So yeah. Wow.
But I felt, so you mentioned you were shy. Like I felt being so shy and being unable to speak actually helped me in the long run, because it forced me to really understand people. Like I would just study people, especially when I was really young. I didn't quite get people. Like, why are people doing this? Like as a kid, right? Like, why are the adults like, oh, someone said this, now no one's talking about it. That's weird. Why aren't they talking about it? Oh, because it's a sensitive subject. Everyone's thinking about it, but no one wants to talk about it. Oh, okay, I get it now. That's how these animals, like, it's almost like, yeah, like these animals work. Like,
these
like,
we're just apes.
But yeah, right. As a kid, it was like, oh, okay. And so I think that it kind of helped me later on when I started like doing public speaking and especially DMing, because I would have this real awareness of like how people were reacting to what I was saying, because I had spent so much time watching other people, like, oh, this person's talking and how are people reacting. Like when I was at GaryCon, I had this hilarious moment of watching this group play this adventure. I'm just sitting back and observing. And it was so funny to be like, oh, I see all the dynamics in play. And I see now you're going to talk and it's going to derail everything, because this person's just going to like, oh yeah, then this guy over here is getting frustrated. And it was just so interesting to see and how that's like serving, especially as a DM. Did you feel like that, anything similar, like being shy and then kind of coming out of your shell, or was it like?
Yeah, it's hysterical to say, but because of dungeon mastering, I realized at one point in my career, explorations, and I was like, well, I guess I can't be a journalist and like full time. And I was like I was helping translate Spanish at a grade school in my hometown because I'd minored in Spanish and I was like okay at it. And so I was like, they were like, we need someone. So that was like my out of high school job. And then I learned about a grant program to go teach English in Spain. And I was like, I would love to do that, but I've never taught, like officially. I've taught a little bit through Apple and whatever, but I decided to go get certified through Cambridge University for like a CELTA program, which is like teaching English. And so
I used to teach those courses.
No way. Well, I'll have you know, I graduated with the top rank in my class. I hope you would have been proud of me. However, what I discovered during that course, it's this course that revealed this to me. It is terrifying to get up in front of a class of like 40 volunteer students who are actual ESL students. And the way Ben would know this, the way the class goes is like you get oriented on day one, and then day two, they're like, you're teaching. Like you are teaching now. They throw you up in front of a class with a lesson plan that you cobbled together, and you have to teach from like day two. And so they're kids that are like so like young people that are like shaking in the hallway before they go in to teach their first class. And I remember being like, oh, I have a mode called Dungeon Master mode. And this actually concretely occurred to me where I was like, oh my God, I just have to do Dungeon Master Kelsey. And then it's not me scared Kelsey, it's like confident who knows the rules and who can like guide the group. And I literally flipped on Dungeon Master mode and went out in front of this class. And like it went really well. It went really well. And it occurred to me that for the first time in my young life that I actually had developed a persona that was a confident public speaker, and I didn't know I had her. And she was there. And it was so empowering, and I thought it was like the coolest thing. So that was crucial. Yeah. Crazy. Ben, you used to teach these classes, you
So
sadist.
it was 2008, and I had just gotten back from a year in China, and I brought my exotic Canadian wife with me, and we got married, but she could not legally work in the United States. So it was childcare 5 days a week, and then teaching people how to teach English on the weekends because I did 2 years in Egypt, a year in Japan, and a year in China at that point. Um,
Whoa.
so I got back and like the only thing I knew well was how to teach English, and getting paid to teach other people how to teach English was definitely in my wheelhouse. So it was that was my last recession, which is a thing I'm thinking about a lot right now. And in some ways, it was really kind of great to be like teaching and in front of kids or adults for that matter every day. But there were like 60-day stretches where it was like working every day because you're childcare during the week and then TESOL certification on the weekends. And my poor wife was at home and didn't know anybody because she's Canadian. So it was a
Oh,
wild time. But we
yeah.
are approaching an hour, and I do not like to keep people over an hour. Um, I'll ask Mike this first. Any work of any work of yours you recommend to people?
Any of
Like
my work?
you
That means it was
know,
like, no, none of it. It's all garbage. No, yeah,
I mean,
it's all just the
it's a
worst.
combination of, and also like, does anyone listening to this not have a fifth edition player's handbook like at home? Like, but please continue. So, is there any work of yours that you might recommend?
So, well, I have a Patreon, patreon.com/Mike Mearls. It's one word. It's where I'm developing my new system. It's called Odyssey. Okay, so it takes, because I have one more question for Kelsey 'cause it's based on this. It's inspired by well, it took a while to figure this out because I was like designing the system. I'm like, why am I designing this system? And then I realized, oh, I wanted this 10-minute timer for like random encounters and weird stuff happening, inspired by the torch timer. So that's what I'm working on. It's the idea is to streamline the game so you can have this 10-minute timer in the background, and the game still is really snappy, so it's still moving, but it's still got like some of the tactical heft. Like I also worked on fourth edition in D&D miniatures and Magic the Gathering and whatever. So I like tactical games. But the how did you come up with the idea for the torch timer? Like where did that come from?
Oh my gosh, it's so funny. It's all interlinked because being an English language teacher, I learned that timing students would get them to improve their fluency because they wouldn't overthink their actions, like what they were going to say. And so that was something I learned teaching, and I was like, well, we should do this in D&D. So it
Okay,
all comes full circle.
no, it is true because as soon as I play tested at GaryCon, and as soon as I put the 10-minute, so I'm using a 10-minute timer, right? But the even any timer, it made the game run so much better to the point where I think this is the new unexplored territory for TTRPGs is real time game mechanics. Because it's so funny you say that because it's almost exactly what I got from my players in the playtest. First, they all loved it. Like it was so I was like, oh, this is awesome. But one of the players said something like, without the timer, we would have spent 30 minutes coming up with a plan that was like a 9 out of 10. But because we have this timer, we spent 2 minutes coming up with a plan that was an 8 out of 10. And that was so much more fun. And I'm like, yes, that's it, because it's like the 80% rule. Like, you like, it doesn't take long to get to 80% of the way there. And in a TTRPG, it's like, that's enough. Like, just move on, right? Like, and so that's so cool to hear. Like, that's where that came from, because that's exactly what I'm seeing. And I think it's what makes the game so much fun, because this is the thing that drives me bananas about TTRPGs. There's the schedules. It's so hard to schedule a session, but when you get together, everyone, my experience is that everyone treats the time so casually and disposably. Like, oh, we're just going to talk about stuff and we're going to catch up and it's being social. I mean, that's nice, but it's like, these might be the only 4 hours this month I have to play this style of game. Like, if it was a Magic tournament, you'd be like, we're playing, right? Like, you know,
no hesitation.
When I played Warhammer, it's like, hey, cool. You know, I play with my friend Jefferson. You know, I haven't played in years, but like when I would play with my friend Jefferson, it's like, yeah, okay, get armies out, terrain out, let's play. Like, we're here to play Warhammer, right? Like, yeah, we're going to convince as we play, but we're pushing plastic space marines and demons around the table because we want to play Warhammer, right? Like, but for whatever reason, TTRPGs, it's like, hey, we spent the hour just talking about stuff. Oh well, like no, right? Like, I want to play. So, anyways, that's sorry, Ben, didn't mean to completely diverge. But
this is. I mean, I'll ask you guys right now. In 6 weeks, 2 months, could I have you guys both on again?
Sure.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to like pressure if I'm not pressuring.
No,
Kelsey.
I'm good. No, I mean, I'm gonna need a break from like furiously trying to finish all of the print stuff for the Kickstarter. I'm gonna need
you got a big
check.
Kickstarter. Yeah.
On that note, Miss Dionne, you have a Kickstarter.
I do. It's only like 2 more days left until it closes. Although, I mean,
Will there be
we are
backer
doing
kits?
late. We're doing late pledges. So it's, you know, but the exciting part is coming in 2 days where we're like, how did we end up? And so it's for a setting for Shadowdark called the Western Reaches, which is a big hex crawl focused, like sort of open sandbox setting that's trying to make that style of play easy to pick up and run with. And so it's very like lore light. It's like the lore comes out as you play it, hopefully. So that's what I'm up to. That's on
Very
Kickstarter.
Cool. And listeners, if you have enjoyed this conversation, I too have a Patreon, and I will, for my patrons, have conversations akin to this one. This one is going out wide to the public on YouTube and Libsyn and every other podcast app in the world. But if you liked it, I have a conversation with Zeb Cook at GaryCon that took place in Hugh Hefner's suite. He designed second edition, and it was a truly magical GaryCon moment. So if you wish you could have been there, please go and check out the Zeb Cook episode on our Patreon. I have Ken Haidt and Sandy Peterson talking about Call of Cthulhu. I have historian Matt Shoemaker interviewing Gen Con owner Peter Atkinson about the history of Gen Con. All that for a mere $3 a month, listeners. Less than a cup of coffee in New York, I'm sure. So please, there'll be a link in the show notes. Go check it out. I'll put a link to Mike's Patreon and Kelsey's Kickstarter down there as well. So listeners, thank you so much for joining us. Kelsey, Mike, this has been absolutely fantastic, and I can't thank you enough for being on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having us.